It's January 26, 1979, and here at Western High School, it's registration day. And for one 16-year-old Kim Bryant, she's coming over here to pick her classes. She has on a black skirt and a white blouse. And she meets up with her friends in this school, and they chit-chat or whatever, and she registers for whatever classes that she's picking. And one of her friends says, hey, let's go hang out at Dairy Queen. It's right up the road from where I'm at. And that is the place where all these kids that have gone to school here throughout the decades would go hang out at. She walks with a friend of hers across the street to this location, which used to be Dairy Queen. It is no longer obviously a Dairy Queen, but this was where a lot of kids would come and hang out and, you know, get ice cream, play Pac-Man on their tabletop video game. So at this time now, there's some slight discrepancies in the time, but it's around 9:30, 10 o'clock. Dairy Queen is not open yet, and there's a bunch of kids just milling around here in this parking lot. And Kim, she's talking to one of her friends, and these two guys in a silver primer colored Chevrolet, they pull up and they start talking to some of the girls. And they shout out some kind of vulgarities, and then they take off down the street. One of Kim's friends' mom, they come to pull up to pick up their daughter. And she asks Kim, she says, hey, do you want to ride home? And she says, no, my boyfriend's supposed to meet me here at 10 o'clock. And she's, okay, take it easy. She leaves, and Kim, she stays right here waiting for her boyfriend. About after 10:15, her boyfriend comes up to this Dairy Queen, and he doesn't know where Kim is. She's not in the front. She's not in the back. He's thinking, okay, she probably stood me up. So he turns around and takes off out of here. When the early evening arrives and passes without any sign of Kim, her parents, they start getting worried, and they go ahead and they start calling all of her friends. And nobody has seen Kim. The last time they had seen her was when she was at Dairy Queen earlier in the morning. So Kim would never come back home. And about 3 weeks later, on February 20th, 1979, some kids were shooting BB guns out in the desert on what is now Buffalo and Charleston. And they come across a very grisly sight. They see a shallow grave and a poor attempt of hiding a body. And they run home, they tell their parents, they call the police arrive. And it's the decomposing remains of a young female. She's nude from the waist down, and strangely, there's a pile of her clothes folded neatly by where she's laying. And later, dental records would confirm the identity, and that was of Kim. It would be over 40 years where her murder went unsolved until in November of 2021, they finally, after getting a donation from a philanthropist, his name was Justin Wu, a company tested what little DNA they had, because there was semen found on the body. And in November of 2021, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department had a press conference, and they announced that the identity of Kim's killer was one Johnny Peterson, this losing scumbag right here. And Johnny Peterson is also linked to another murder as well. Now, we don't really know if this guy was one of the two losers that was in that car when they were harassing those girls. But he died of a drug overdose. I forgot exactly what year. I want to say 1993 off the top of my head. So in a sense, justice was never brought to the family. And however, he is no longer able to hurt anybody else. Back in January of 1974, 75-year-old Theodate Shiner lived at the corner house over on 130 North 11th Street. Now, the postal carrier would come and deliver the mail, and sometimes Theodate would say hello to them, and they would, talk back and forth and what have you. So, January the 16th, 17th, the postal carrier hasn't seen Theodate in a couple of days, and they noticed that the mail hasn't been collected. So they think possibly, okay, maybe she's sick, and they just delivered the mail. So a few days after that, they start getting worried. It's been about 5 days now that they haven't seen Theodate, and she hasn't been outside her home to collect the mail. So now they're thinking possibly she's really, really sick. So they call the police, and the police come, and they're doing a welfare check. So they look around the house, they check the front door, the door's locked, but there looks like there's some damage to the doorknob. So they go around the house, and they notice that a back rear window is open and the screen has been slit. So they make their way into her residence, and in her bedroom, lying on the floor, is Theodate. She had been asphyxiated. This was a robbery. They killed this 75-year-old woman for whatever possessions, she had. Now, of course, her home is no more. It's just an empty lot. But right here, 50 years ago, a woman lived and was brutally murdered, and to this day, we don't have any information on who committed this crime. Nobody messes with Benny Binion. George William Coulthard was born on May 21st, 1916 in Modell, Iowa. Never heard of Modell, Iowa? Neither have I. I don't think any of us have heard of Modell, Iowa. The only people who heard of Modell, Iowa are people from Modell, Iowa, very, very small rural farm town. So right out of high school, Bill, as he's known to his friends and family, decides that he wants to be a lawyer, so he goes to law school at the University of Omaha. Now, after graduating, he is a full-fledged attorney, so he gets a job with the FBI? The FBI? That's what I thought when I was first reading this story. I said, that's odd that he would finish law school and then get a job with the FBI. Neither here nor there. So he finishes law school, and he's admitted to the Iowa bar in 1936. And soon after, he would get a job at the FBI. Then in 1939, the FBI, they ship him out here to Las Vegas, where he would be the first resident FBI agent. At a time, Las Vegas is starting to become a burgeoning oasis of debauchery, drinking, prostitution, murder, just crime in general. And he is tasked with bringing in some law and order. And plus, by that time, you have a little bit of inkling of the mafiosi, the mafia guys coming into Las Vegas. muscling their way in, because there's a lot of money to be made in this place. So Bill would work in Las Vegas for the FBI from 1939 to 1945. Now, after 1945, he takes the bar exam to become an attorney here in Nevada. He passes the bar exam, and now he is registered to work here in Nevada legally as an attorney. He wants to open up his own law practice, but I do know that for the first couple years after his retirement from the FBI, he did work for the city attorney here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And for the next 27 some odd years, he would have a pretty illustrious career. He is looked upon as a man of law and order. From 1951 to 1954, he served as an assemblyman in Nevada. He was president of the Nevada Bar Association, and he was also secretary-treasurer for the Las Vegas Water District. And also, he married a woman that was very rich. A lot of you guys watching may not know the name Pietro Salvagni, but he was a very rich real estate developer. He also had his hand in other business ventures as well. So he is the man that's responsible for building Las Vegas's first, I don't know if you can call it a luxury hotel. In 1932, he opened up the Apache Hotel. It was the first multi-level hotel in Las Vegas that had air conditioning, full carpeting, and get this, guys, it had an elevator. I know, crazy, right? An elevator. Who would have thought? So he builds this place, and he does other stuff. He has other properties around Utah, Nevada, Arizona. And Pietro had a daughter. Her name was Lena. So in 1942, Bill and Lena got married. Now, they would only be married for about 13 years, and then she sadly died during heart surgery in California in 1955. So in her dying, she left him quite a sizable portfolio, and now Bill is an instant millionaire, and he owns 37.5% of the land that the Apache is on. Now, just about the time that Bill retired from the FBI, a man coming from Texas named Benny Binion moved to Las Vegas to get his hand into the gambling racket. In 1951, Benny Binion purchased the Apache Hotel from Pietro Salvagni. However, he did not purchase the land. He only purchased the hotel. Pietro and the Salvagni family, they still owned the land. And, Benny Binion and Bill Coulthard, they would meet, and it would not be pretty. So Benny and Bill, they didn't like each other. Well, maybe Benny didn't care about Bill, but Bill, he didn't like Benny's business practices. And Bill knew that Benny, he knew about his history going back to Texas, and he knew that he was responsible for several murders in Texas and in Nevada. And Benny Binion, his lease on that land was soon to come up. And it was widely known that Bill was not going to renew the lease on the land. And Benny knew it, and Benny needed Bill rubbed out. And that's exactly what happened. That building in front of you used to be the Bank of Nevada building, and Bill Coulthard, he had his law practice up there on the 10th floor, and he was also general counsel for the Bank of Nevada as well. So we go back to July 25th, 1972. So it's about 3:40 p.m. and Bill Coulthard, he is leaving for the day. So from the 10th floor, he takes the elevator down to the 3rd level. It's right there that is where his late model Cadillac is parked. So he gets behind the wheel of the Cadillac, puts his keys into the ignition, and starts his car. All of a sudden, the loudest explosion that you would ever want to hear echoes out of that parking structure right there. And everybody within about a half a mile radius could feel, or not feel, but they could hear the explosion. And people within about a block and a half can feel the explosion. That's how powerful it was. And about maybe 2 blocks away, a man hears a loud explosion, and he smiles because he knows that the job is complete. You have every single fire truck within about a 5-mile radius comes to this scene, and there is thick black smoke coming out from under that building right there. And as the firefighters are making their way into the garage, they come upon that scene, and there's many explosions occurring in the garage because the fire is so hot, it's so intense, that the other cars that were parked next to the Cadillac, their gas tanks are starting to explode. So they start spraying water and fire retardant foam to get the fire under control. It's like 800 degrees in that parking garage, and it took at least 30 minutes for that heat to dissipate, for the firefighters to get to where they can tell anyways, where the epicenter of that explosion occurred. And when they get to Bill's Cadillac, well, first of all, they don't know it's Bill. They don't even know what happened exactly, but they can tell that something exploded because the concrete below the explosion point is just completely destroyed, and the hood was blown open. So they're suspecting right away. They're not the ATF. They're going to call the ATF. They do call the ATF, but they can tell that something exploded in the car, and they wouldn't know until later on that they could confirm that that was Bill Coulthard's car. That was his body in there, and it was reduced to nothing but a charred mess. So now the investigation commences. Who is going to be the person that is responsible for the murder of Bill Coulthard? Now, you got to start at the beginning. So we're going to go to where his offices were, and we're going to talk to everybody in the building. And they're interviewing his partner in the law practice. And, basically the partner says he didn't really have any enemies. We didn't do criminal defense. We only did civil matters. And everybody in the building checked out. So now you got to move on to his past. He worked for the FBI. They start looking over all of his old cases that he was responsible in apprehending people and putting them away. But none of the cases that he was ever on, strangely enough, nobody ever really did any kind of heinous crime. Nobody really served a lot of time. And so they're looking at that, and they're also looking at Benny Binion. And they're also looking at Benny Binion's right-hand arm man, Tom Hanley. And strangely enough, when they're looking back over at his case files, they see that in 1948, that Bill Coulthard arrested Tom Hanley, or was responsible in the, not arrested, but he was responsible for prosecuting him when he worked for the city attorney's office, because, well, Tom Hanley, this guy was a nutcase. So back in 1948, he beat half to death a union worker. There's a whole history with this Tom Hanley guy. So this guy came into the office of Tom Hanley, who at the time was a manager in the Locals 88 Union Hall out here in Las Vegas. So this guy comes into his office and he says, "Hey, why'd you take me off the building project?" And Tom Hanley, a very, very violent individual. I should just do his own separate story just because of how insane he was. Tom Hanley would beat and kill his way all the way from being secretary of the local Union 88 Labor Hall here in Las Vegas to being the regional manager of the Southern California, Nevada, and Arizona American Federation of Labor. This guy was so crazy and violent. This guy would have probably been the international president of the AFL and been making some pretty good money and would have been a very, very powerful individual if he wasn't such a freaking nutcase. Now, even though this murder is still technically unsolved, it is widely believed that Tom Hanley and his son Granby were the ones that planted the explosives in the car, killing Bill here. There's going to be future videos about the Hanleys. Their story will probably be told in a couple different videos of mine. And this is Bill's daughter, Leslie. She died in a car accident just a couple days after graduating high school. Very, very tragic circumstances for the Coulthard family. And I said it before and I'll say it again. Don't mess with Benny Binion. It's January 21st, 1972. It's about 11:30 p.m. at night. 43-year-old Palmer Lawrence, he works for a yellow cab company. And he's at a cab stand on Casino Center and Fremont Street waiting for a fare. The guy whistles, he comes, pulls up, jumps in his cab. He gets on the radio and he tells dispatch, "I got a fare going to 801 South 3rd Street. He hits the meter, turns around, and disappears with his fare down the street. Around 6:18 a.m., a woman calls the police and says that there's a taxi cab that has its engine running and its lights on, and that they're parked in front of 801 South 3rd Street, and they've been there practically the entire night. Before they went to bed, they seen this car, and they're still there. The police come, and what they expect is to see a sleeping cab driver who has worked way too many hours, but instead they see Palmer Lawrence slumped over the steering wheel in his cab with 2 bullets in the back of his head. Murder is still unsolved till this day. What did the killer take for taking a hard-working man's life? $25. You can still see the name on this building of the business that used to occupy this structure, Contrell's Cleaners. On April 23rd, 1971, police receive a call from a man absolutely frantic. He's screaming so much they can barely understand him. The guy is screaming, "Help, help, help. Somebody came in here and they busted in and they robbed the place and they set it on fire. My bosses are in there along with their kid. The place is totally on fire." So firefighters and police arrive to this scene and this place is totally up ablaze. And it is super hot. It's about 1,000 degrees, it feels like, as the firefighters are trying to put out the fire. As they're dealing with the smoldering building that is set ablaze, they're dealing with the guy who had called 911. His name was John Jake Wright. They called him Jake. He was 46 years of age. And he's at the payphone and he doesn't look good. His clothes have basically melted on him, and his skin is very, very bright red, and they could immediately tell that he has very, very bad burns on his face, his hands, his arms, everything. So for the next 20 minutes or so, they're putting out the fire here at Control Cleaners. And after the flames and the smoke dissipate, they go and start checking out the ruins. And in the back of this building, they discovered 3 charred bodies in the back next to a safe, open and completely empty. Those 3 bodies would later be identified as 50-year-old Alfred Lizio, his wife, 50-year-old Ada Lizio, and their 14-year-old son, Johnny. They're taken to the coroner's office for autopsy, while Jake is taken to the local hospital, and now detectives have the task of finding out what in God's name happened here and who's responsible. Now, when Jake first called the police to tell them what had occurred, it was about midnight. And so when they take him to the hospital, detectives are going to want to know, why were you guys open at midnight? Now, when they arrived at the hospital, Jake is a miserable sight. He has 2nd and 3rd degree burns over 70% of his body. He is in immense pain. But they still have to talk to him to see what the hell took place, and if they could, he can identify the person responsible for this. So they're asking him what happened. So he said on that night that he was there along with the Lizios. It was a very, very chaotic 3 days, and they were just basically getting caught up at, filling in orders and laundering clothes, etc. He was here fixing a pressing machine that had broken earlier in the afternoon. So he said just before midnight, it's about 11:30, 11:45, and the business is closed, the front door is locked. However, they had left this door right here open for ventilation. And so as they're working, all of a sudden, he says a big black dude comes barging in through this door right here with a silver gun and says, "Freeze, give me the money. Everybody down." And they're freaked out. They do as they're told. So this black dude, he tells them, "Where's the money?" And Alfred tells him, "Hey, there's the cash register in the front." He goes over there, opens up the cash register, comes back, and starts tying everybody up. Now, I don't know if he forced one person to tie up everybody or he did it himself, because you would think 2 guys would try to tackle him. But eventually, everybody gets tied up, and he's telling Alfred, "Where's the safe? Where's the safe?" And he says, "It's in the other room." He goes into the room and he's looking for the safe. He comes back and goes, "Where the hell's the safe?" And he's cussing and doing all this and that. And finally, he grabs Alfred, unties his hands, and he tells him, "If you make one move, I'm going to kill all of you." And Alfred said, please don't hurt my family. I'll give you whatever you want." He goes into the safe and he gives them everything, estimated about $3,000. And there were some silver certificates that Alfred had been collecting for a long time. He gets all the money, everything out of the safe, and he ties Alfred back up again. And before he leaves, he has some kind of a pipe or a metal something, some kind of a blunt object, and he starts beating everybody just terribly. And after he feels they had enough and they're unconscious, he drags their bodies over to the next room. And Jake, he got knocked out, but he woke right back up, but he pretends he's unconscious. And he says the dude, right before he left, there was this big vat of solvent that they use in their business. He says before he left, he knocks over the solvent and it just leaks all over the floor, and he takes out a lighter and lights it and then leaves, letting the Lizio family, including Jake Wright, to burn to death. But Jake was able to escape and call for help. Unfortunately, Jake only survived for about 30 days from his injuries before he would pass. So now you have 4 people who were murdered at this establishment. However, police got a lucky break because the stupid idiot scumbag who murdered those people, he accidentally left his gun laying on a table at the scene of this crime. The first rule in committing a quadruple murder is to not leave your weapon at the murder location. If you do that, there's a high probability that you're going to get caught. So investigators, they run the serial numbers on the gun, and lo and behold, this gun had just been previously purchased from a pawn shop down in Phoenix, Arizona. The man who bought the gun, 32-year-old Barnell Bishop. And so they were also able to find out that Barnell had stayed at the Four Queens Hotel, barely a mile from the murder location. And well, Barnell, very stupid person. Not only did he leave his murder weapon at the scene of the crime, he also left the bank bags that contained the cash that he stole before he murdered that family and Jake over at the cleaners. And the laundry tags that were inside the bank bags, well, they said control cleaners on them. So you have a pretty good indication that this violent creep is the one that is responsible for this quadruple murder. So an APB is put out on Barnell Bishop, and about a week later, in May 1st, 1971, he's pulled over in Reno, Nevada, after they had seen his car driving down the street. There was a be on the lookout for him, and he was with his girlfriend. So they pull him over, guns out, get on the ground, all that stuff. So they take him in, and they take the girlfriend to an interrogation room, separate from the killer. And so they asked her, you know, your boyfriend is wanted on a quadruple murder. Well, at this time it was a triple murder because Jake hadn't died yet. And you know, they say that they found the bank bags at the room, and she said, yeah, I did see the bank bags, but I didn't really think anything of it. We stayed there for 2 nights. We checked out around 6:30 a.m. on the 23rd, and we went up to Lovelock. We stayed at a casino in Lovelock, and then we continued on to Reno. So investigators call up the casino, the hotel casino in Lovelock where he stayed at, and they send him a picture of Barnell, and they said, okay, does this guy look familiar? And they said, yeah, he stayed at the casino. That guy lost a pretty good amount of money. Because I don't remember how much he lost, but it was a few $1,000s. So with the money from the robbery, he just gave it to a casino in Lovelock. And also some of his friends had stated that Barnell had admitted to the crime. And also, when he got arrested and was extradited back down to Las Vegas, he's locked up in the Clark County Detention Center. And he got into a fight with another inmate, and somebody overheard him supposedly say, I'm going to make you number 5. So all signs point to this creep being the murderer. Barnell Bishop was found guilty of the 4 murders and was sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences in the Nevada Department of Corrections. As the recording of this video, Barnell Bishop is still alive. He's 86 years of age, and he's doing his time at the Northern Nevada Correctional Facility for murdering the Lizio family here. Murdered 4 people to give all the money away to a casino.